Hey, Dr. Julie.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
I just wanted to personally thank you for a fantastic anniversary weekend. And it was really nice.
You're welcome.
I know, it was a good time. It was a good time. And coming off of last week's podcast, we had some incredible insight and a lot of feedback from the moms out there. So this week, we're going to dive right back into talking about birth. And this week's podcast is titled Male Practice. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Prime Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Skip Wyss, the Bowtie Chiropractor. Right here, I got the cheetah print on today. Yeah, well, you bought it for me. And I've got Dr. Fairy Fingers herself, the BDC certified business coach, Dr. Julie Wyss, with me today. And it is absolutely wonderful to have you here. And I figured there is nobody better to talk about this topic with me today than you, Dr. Julie, and male practice. And we're not talking about malpractice, whereas getting sued, getting yourself in trouble ethically in business or in healthcare. We're talking about male practice. We're talking about birth, and we're talking about how it has become very, very male-centric. And this isn't a rip on men at all, but birth has become very male-centric, even though men don't give birth to babies.
Really?
Really, right? That might come as a massive shock to all of us that we are biologically cannot give birth to babies, but females can, and women can. And there is a book wrote back in the 80s called Male Practice. And I remember when you first read it, you were not really appalled, but really awestruck by how things haven't changed. And you had read this back in 2010. Can you tell us a little bit about what you had thought about this book, Male Practice?
Nothing has changed. And so nothing has changed from when I read it in the 2000s. Nothing's changed since it's 2020s. It's just how society views things, and it was scary to me that when the book was written and we are still living within that same world.
So when the book was written, they talk a lot, and I remember you talking about the first couple chapters were how things were worded to women, things were worded to our birthing moms, to lead them down paths of choosing cesarean, to lead them down paths of choosing surgery over a vaginal birth. And I feel that is an incredibly disempowering thing for our moms. I think that what we do here at Prime Family Chiropractic Centers, and particularly with this podcast as well, is the ability to empower our moms and empower our parents to make really good decisions, and decisions that they're okay with, not decisions that we may agree with.
But I think even before it's even decisions, I think everybody needs to know what the options are.
Right.
And so that was the thing in the book of, if you don't even know what the options are, of course you're going to be going down these roads because you didn't know that there was something else that you could have chosen.
So let's turn the tables a little bit on this then. Let's start calling it female practice. And what would you choose then as a mom of two, been attending hundreds of births over your career and working with thousands of pregnant moms? Where would you first start then if you were a primary care provider in a hospital setting, not at Prime Family Chiropractic Centers? Where would you start first then with your moms?
I would lay out, again, all of the options. And that's why I think really starting with a birth plan is important, because if you are thinking, okay, I want to have a birth plan, well, you have to do the research to think of what are all the things that I'm going to put into that birth plan. And I think that's when you start with that planning process, you then start to open up the cascade of, oh, nobody's ever talked about this, or I didn't know that was even an option. Wait, They still do that archaic, different techniques that should no longer be happening. And the different, like the vitamin K shot, that's one thing, but the ointment in the eye, and people just think, or women in general, or the couples just think, well, that's just routine, that's what needs to happen. But if you actually knew what these things were, and if you would read them later on in your file to think of, there is no possible way that I could have ever had STDs. But when it's being put on your child, that is the perception or that's the perception that the facility is looking at you of, well, we don't know, we're just going to be cautious. versus if you would have came to the table of, okay, these are the things that I want. Here are things that, I want to stay away from. But again, if you've done the research and you know what all the options are, then you can start to lay out the pros and cons behind everything. But you can also be well informed. So you might have an experience that you want, but you have to also understand the other side of the coin, that things don't always maybe happen how they're supposed to or how you envision. But if you've done that research and you know what all the options are, then you can still be informed and prepped should you need to make other choices.
So as a mom then, and giving birth to 2 now, where would you start first? I know you said birth plan, but in that birth plan, there's kind of a structured guide to walking through from when you come into the hospital to how you want to be taken care of. Do you want nurses in the room? Do you want the ability to be able to birth in a tub versus birth on the bed? And let's go into that first, is birthing in a tub versus in a bed. A lot of hospitals do have regulations against actually giving birth in a hot tub or in a pool, but you can come out and birth it on the bed. So let's go down a little bit of birth position. I think that's something that a lot of moms out there, we get tons of questions about. What's the best position to give birth to our babies in? How can we best present? Because when we go into the hospital setting, they really do ask us that we birth on our backs. And I can go into a whole cascade of biomechanical and neurological disadvantages of that. But I want you to take a women's perspective on that. And what do you feel is the best place to go, Dr. Julie, first when we come to birth positions?
Well, if you enter that room and you are okay being on your back, that only makes it easier for that entire team to then, sedate you.
Okay.
Give you different,
Sure.
Plug you into machines. And so like that
make you
really starts that cascade. Like that is the ideal, that you can be complacent and then we can put you in that bed and we can strap you into that bed. But movement like that, to be able to be moving through birth, that is what is going to help you through the pain. Many women say like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm for sure going to get an epidural, because typically that cascade started because we were laying in a bed. If we would be able to have movement and hip squeezes and squatting and sitting on a ball, just that movement is what allows our body to be able to process through each of those contractions, which also allows for the cascade for that baby to move through. I mean, we can get science and talk about gravity, but man, if we're pushing a baby out,
you want gravity.
You want everything working
right.
in your power. And as soon as you recline, even if you're still inclined a little bit, but you recline, gravity goes away. And like our moms here are super lucky that they're under really, really good chiropractic care. But I give, if we're looking at, if this is 10 centimeters, right? If we potentially, and that's like where moms had, good chiropractic care through their entire pregnancy, that is the ideal that we want. But as soon as when we lay on our back, what happens to that hole?
You mean you change it in the birth canal?
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually decreases by 30%.
It decreases. And then if maybe you didn't have good chiropractic care and your pelvis isn't where it needs to be.
Or any chiropractic care.
Anything. Then, I look at the possibility of like, man, that's really hard work to be able to push that baby through. So again, if you weren't under chiropractic care, right?
Yep.
So maybe the outlet isn't what it needs to be, and then you go and recline in a bed, you're shooting the odds of, that's why you're going to need to have an epidural or the, to work through the pain process. And if you don't have a really good birth support team, that they're just going to allow you to maybe make choices outside of something that maybe you should have been empowered to be able to explore.
Well, I think that is something that is incredibly insightful coming from your perspective. I think it's seeing you with the ability going through two types of births. Number one, with Peyton, you had pain medication. You did not have an epidural. You didn't have an epidural with Brecken either. Brecken, you had 0 pain medication. You did hypnobirthing, which allowed you to help with your mindset, from what I understand. And then also with Peyton, our first birth, you were kind of locked to the bed, and they didn't really want you up moving around, and they monitored you, and they put a monitor on your uterus, and on your belly uterus. I'm so sorry, but they put a monitor on your lower abdomen to monitor your uterus and monitor baby, which at times they can tell you is essential, but other times it's not, because you need to move around. The motion during pregnancy is just as important as the motion pre-pregnancy as well. And I think one of the worst things that we were told that really bugs me is that I remember the OB telling you after we had baby that, you know, all that walking you did really didn't do anything up until that point. It's just to buy time. And I will tell you right now that is absolutely bullcrap, because your SI joints are designed to move 4 millimeters side to side. And if they cannot move, the middle part of your pelvis can't shift back. That changes everything, ladies, on how you're able to give birth. Hence why giving birth on your back, if we decrease your pelvic canal by 30%, and then we lose proper nerve communication to your uterus, that's going to decrease by another 60%. You're going into the biggest game of your life, working max at 40 to 50% of your total body efficiency. And that's not okay with me. No wonder they want to put you on a bed. No wonder they don't want you moving around. And that's not okay.
There's many women that do it, right? It's just and that's where we get them. Man, I wish I would have known this sooner, maybe for my first child or my second child. And that's where we really start to share the birth stories that these moms have of, this is what it was like before. Man, I wish I would have had you for my other pregnancies.
So if we went through birth positions, from what I can understand, all fours is probably the best. Working with the doulas and midwives that we've worked with in Green Bay extensively for over 15 years and been a part of hundreds of births, squatting, using one of the squatting chairs that they actually have, that is provided. You just have to ask for it. It's there. Having a birth ball in the room, being able to move around, being able to get up, take a shower, because this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. For some of our moms, birth goes fairly quickly, but most of them average between 6 to 8 hours. That's really what we see. We see an average of pushing between 25 to 45 minutes max. Like, that's what we see with chiropractic care and with our moms that move in and out. So we've got squatting, we have side lying, we have the ability to get up and use a squat bar on the table. But the biggest thing is we don't want you on your back, because what happens then is baby doesn't have a chance to flip and rotate. Baby has to rotate, in the back part of their head has to face the front part of your birth canal to allow for proper dilation of your cervix. That's a big deal, ladies and moms out there. So that has to happen. And when I get in moms that unfortunately have had an asynclitic birth or brow presentation birth, not knowing fully the case history, a lot of the times it is a back birth type situation. The other side of it is too, is the middle part of your pelvis is designed to move, and you have special ligaments that actually take your sacrum and pull it back. That's why birthing on all fours is so important. And the birth practice of birthing on your back stems back to England before we even came over in the 1700s. And that's a huge deal, because it was stated that no woman should give birth on all fours like a beast in the kingdom. So they were told to give birth in a bed.
It was a nice thought.
It was a nice gesture.
It was a nice thought.
Okay.
But right. But again, that's not how labor and delivery is meant to be.
Right. And then when baby comes out, of course, we talked about old archaic practices like an episiotomy, internal fetal monitoring, vacuum extraction versus clamp extraction, which still helps. Which still not helps, which is still performed, which still happens at times. We've taken care of number of babies that have been vacuum extracted. We've taken care of hundreds of babies that have been forceps delivered. And some of those babies come out pretty good. Some come out in really, really rough shape with some pretty traumatic birth trauma. And all of that stuff is done to help assist mom give birth to baby, because I'm going to make a statement right now, and it's the truth, that I don't think there's a single birth provider that goes into things, obstetrician, OBGYN, midwife, doula, it doesn't matter. Nobody signed up that day to have birth go negatively. So they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that mom, you get the baby out and baby's born as safely as possible. But sometimes the adjuncts of extra procedures that are brought into play didn't really need to happen. Hopefully, if we could have taken proper steps going up to it, to allow mom to move around, to allow you to be empowered during your birth, to tell you that you can do it, to tell you that you can get through it, to tell you that you can handle the pain, handle the pressure. Because I saw you give birth to our babies, and I saw you give birth to Peyton and to Brecken. And the empowerment that I saw out of you, it was absolutely amazing to see women that are able to do this, let alone you, my wife, and to have these babies and these beautiful children in front of us. But the other side of it is too, is I want to dive down something else, is food during pregnancy. I think this is a question that we get asked a lot is what do I do on my way in? Like I got my go bag packed. I've got everything ready to go. And the first thing I always ask is what?
What do you have packed for food?
Do you have snacks? And they look at me like I'm a fat kid and they're like, hey, like you mean like Snickers bars and snacks for you? I'm like, no, snacks for you, Mom. Because if you're there, as soon as you start, they're not going to allow you to eat at a hospital. Correct. Home birth's a little bit different. Home birth's way different. Home birth's 180 degrees opposite because you're in your home and you can do whatever the hell you want as long as the midwife's comfortable with it. But in the hospital, you're not going to get fed after you get in there. Why is that?
Well, they're, again, looking at their game plan. And so they know what the percentages are. They know what the provider does. And they're always prepping for if you need to have the epidural and cesarean.
Possible surgery. So we can't have you eating if you're going to have anesthesia to be put under or have an epidural. Like it's rougher on your system to bring you back out. And we talk to different nurse anesthetists all the time and talk to them about giving epidurals to their patients. And we've had long conversations, and it floored me when I was talking to a patient a little while back, absolutely awesome guy, talking about how his wife actually did not have an epidural during her last pregnancy. This was their number 5 baby. And he said, I don't know if I ever want to give an epidural to a mom again because her recovery was amazing. And she could actually move around her entire pregnancy, Dr. Skip. Like, that was his thing. Like, he was blown away. He was like, she could move. And I said, yeah, and how was her recovery? He goes, her recovery was amazing. Like, she could get out of bed right away. She could go to the bathroom. She could clean. She could do a lot of things that he sees a lot of moms have an inability to do because an epidural was given. So let's talk about snacks real quick. Let's go back to food before I go off on another tangent here. And it's funny because in the back, you're like, I don't know how you do this without an outline. I'm like, I have an outline, but it's all in my head. And that's why I love to work with you because I get to surprise you all the time. So talking snacks, what are some good things for moms to have in their bags?
High protein, I think, is always ideal, but easy snackable things. Like I always go to like a pretzel or some little crackers.
You and your pretzels, yeah.
I know, and you don't have a shirt on today without the pockets. But also like a good protein bar or a meal replacement bar, and that's not like you're eating the whole thing at once. Like maybe you're just having some little nibbles of it. Yep. Man, I had Dairy Queen.
Before Brecken, that was a bad decision. We both had stomachache. That was bad.
You had a different stomachache.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the biggest thing is have something that, like, don't pick up something that you've never had before. Pick up things that, like, when you eat it makes you feel good.
Yep.
And
not Oreos.
Oreos don't make me feel good.
Well, I'm just saying, like high sugary things.
You don't want a lot of sugar. You're looking for protein, a little bit of that carb load. Like if you think about it, like you're prepping for, if you were ever like a runner, like you have a big race coming up, and so it's prepping and putting in those high caloric protein type foods is what's going to allow you to to be able to progress through that labor. Without having declines in your caloric intake.
I find that, to go back to this with the sugars, but I find that good natural sugars from like fruit is good for the moms. So like having some of the things like fruit leathers, or not fruit roll-ups, but like they have them at different stores, health food stores, where they're actual 100% fruit. They're leathers. It's fruit strips. There's things that are actually dehydrated, so you can hold them in your mouth, suck on them. These are things that you need to have and be fed for during your delivery, because if you're in there for 6, 8, maybe 10 hours and you haven't eaten, like that's a lot on your system. Most of our moms, if they haven't eaten, are usually hypoglycemic at the time of birth, which means baby's not having the proper sugars either. So baby's going to come out very, very flaccid, very, very, very tired, not really alert, because their bodies aren't geared up to come out as well. So these are all things that we can give you to prep for this, mamas, because this is a big thing for us here at Prime Family Chiropractic Centers in the city of Green Bay here and in the state of Wisconsin. We fight for our moms' rights, number one, but we want the best for our moms when they come in and out. And again, I'm going to make this statement. This is not to go against medical standard, but it is to give you different options and understand to work within those standards of what your rights are as a mom. But more importantly, how can we get your baby out as safe as possible, get you the recovery that you deserve, and have you happy with your pregnancies and not upset or mad that things didn't go your way or things didn't go well, or just a lot of our moms hold a lot of guilt and a lot of trauma from how their births go, and they're just not okay with it, and they second guess everything, and it's because they weren't empowered, number one, But number two, they were never given the options or the plans to be amazing at what they were. So they were never given they were never put into a situation to help them excel. And then number three is it's very high stressed, and it can turn into more of a systems-based approach than a loving, nurturing approach to help that mom.
I always say, like, everybody watches like these love stories, like these movies. You know, even if this is your first baby, close your eyes and start imagining what you want that experience to be, because a lot of it is, it can be scary because you don't know what to expect. Well, you start telling yourself, this is what I'm going to expect. And so closing your eyes and visualizing and seeing how that birth, the process that you want it to be, the things that you're going to feel, the things that you're going to smell, the positions that you're going to be in, what your environment looks like, who's in the room, you really, really you need to start to really get very precise and exact on what that looks like, because our brain is amazing. And when we start to think those things, that's what we manifest. And all of a sudden you can have that birth exactly what you already envisioned, because you didn't let any of those other negative things or those other interventions into that vision that you had seen.
Exactly. And the brain, the subconscious brain, knows no difference between an actual thought and an action. It goes through the same chemical processes. It fires the same exact neurons. That's the whole point of visualization. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that couldn't be more of an empowering thing for our moms, is to visualize and picture the birth that they want. Picture the birth they want, the people around them, the loving atmosphere, the warmth, and start putting light around the whole situation. Start injecting lots of positive thoughts immediately. And nothing should be scary. And that's being prepped by having the good birth team around you. And we fight for our moms here because I want them to just be happy with what they go into, and that they're prepared and that they're ready to go. And pack your snacks, which is really important. Pack your snacks.
And you can make that environment however you want it to be. Like some people want it like calm, candlelight. You know, you can have rock music playing if that's what does it for you. The biggest thing being it's you. And if we're talking about that hospital birth, like think of it like you're checking into the hotel for that night. You get to set that room up however you want.
However you
want.
You know,
you're at the end of the day, you're paying for it. So just make sure you have all of those things that are there that brings you comfort, that maybe excites you, that's gonna, you know, energize you to be able to have this experience that you truly want.
Yeah, and I hope that your partner brings you comfort as well. And their ability to be next to you and hold your hand and rub your head and rub your back. And have a good birth team around you, so your partner can you gentlemen out there, so we can solely focus on our partners, that we can focus on them and not have to focus on everybody else coming in and out of the room, and just be there for your partner and for your spouse. That is the most important, empowering thing. And then at the end, you get this amazing, wonderful baby coming out. And
that's a whole nother story.
It's a whole nother story, and that's a whole nother gamut. And I'll tell you, I really appreciate you guys out there listening, spreading this to everyone. Put some comments down below. Give us a thumbs up, share, like, get over to YouTube, subscribe to what we're doing here at Prime Family Clinics and at the Prime Podcast here. And we just absolutely love you. Now go out there, get it done. Take care, everybody. Bye.